What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is the Icebreaker here, back with another video. But in this one, we are talking about basketball this time around, more specifically the NBA. And you know what? I am a big basketball fan, not as much as a hockey fan, but I still like to follow the NBA every once in a while, and I am pretty knowledgeable on it, I believe. So you know what? I'm going to get right into some predictions here for the season, and I'm going to kick things off in this video with my Eastern Conference standings predictions for the 2022-2023 NBA season. So for all the fans of this channel who've come for my hockey content, don't worry, I'm probably going to have a lot more hockey content coming. Probably not going to be covering any other sport as often as hockey, but like I said, I want to get my NBA predictions out in the open here for the public. If you're not a basketball fan, you don't have to watch this video. It's entirely up to you, but you know, I want to do a little bit of variety, maybe kind of open up my horizons to other sports. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So kicking things off, the 15th seed in the East. This is the team that I believe will have the worst record in the Eastern Conference. I'm going with the Indiana Pacers. I have them with a 23-59 record. Honestly, I think we all know that this is a rebuilding team. No one really expects them to be all that competitive. I mean, I look at the roster. It really is the Tyrese Halliburton show. I really do think he has a bright future, can be an all-star, and I definitely think he's going to be, you know, kind of the main piece of that team moving forward. And I also look at a guy like maybe Benedict Mathurin, you know, a sneaky rookie of the year candidate in my opinion. He was a very high draft pick, and I do think there is some potential there. We have yet to see, but we'll see what happens in his rookie season if he can make an immediate impact on this Pacers team. But apart from that, I don't think there's a ton of talent on this roster as it stands, especially, you know, with the trade rumors, Miles Turner, Buddy Hield likely going to be on their way out in the coming months. So this team obviously going to look a lot worse as the season progresses, and that's why I think they're going to be pretty low in the standings. Like I said, clearly a rebuilding team. I think they're going to be tanking for a top draft pick once again. Just with the East, how a lot of those younger teams, I believe, are also improving. I think Indiana kind of falls in that final seed in the East, in my opinion. And also keep in mind, I use Playoff Predictor to kind of predict all these teams' records. So there is really no math that's off here. I feel like all these records are realistic, and they all kind of match up well with the wins versus losses percentage. I think it adds up to exactly 0. So there's no numbers that are off here, I don't think. But anyway, seed number 14 in the East. Maybe this is lower than people think, but I'm actually going to go with the Charlotte Hornets. Not even to have a 30-win season. I got them at 28-54. I'll be honest, I'm just not a fan of this team whatsoever. I think they're bad. I think they're really bad. I'm aware that LaMelo Ball is an all-star caliber player, but apart from that, I really think he lacks that support on his team. This team is just not great defensively. You look like a guy like Gordon Hayward, who I think is solid, but he needs to stay healthy, and he just hasn't been the last couple of seasons. Obviously, no Miles Bridges with, you know, the situation that's going on. I'm not really going to get into that. You know, that stuff's indefensible. That goes beyond basketball. But in terms of the on-court production that the Hornets have, I don't really see much there outside of LaMelo Ball. I just think they're a bad team. I have no faith in them. Like I said, not great defensively. I think they're going to be a lot worse than people think. And again, there's some other younger teams that I think have better all-around rosters that could take a significant step forward. And that's why the Hornets, I mean, I don't think anyone really expected them to be a play-in team, but I think they could be a lot worse than people think. Coming into the 13th seed in the East, I got the Orlando Magic with a 30-52 record. I think this team is slowly getting better. I think it's going to be gradually, though. I don't think they're quite ready to be a play-in team. I mean, you know, they have a young core, a lot of great pieces. Maybe they can surprise, but, you know, I'm still kind of on the fence there. I think you kind of need to tamper the expectations a little bit. I don't think they're quite at that level, but they're definitely getting there, I would say. I like the core overall, obviously, with Paolo Banchero, the #1 overall draft pick. I think he does have superstar potential, and I just like the roster around him. You know, Markelle Fultz, I think, is pretty decent overall. You know, coming off the bench, I think he's a good kind of sixth-man caliber guy. You got Cole Anthony, obviously Franz Wagner, who was another great rookie last season, and Jalen Suggs, who could potentially take another step forward and kind of have a much more impactful second year, because his rookie season, I guess some people would say, was slightly disappointing. But overall, I think they're going to be a lot more competitive. That's why I have them with 30 wins, but still kind of on the lower side of the Eastern Conference. Don't think they're good enough to make the play-in tournament, but this young core is definitely moving in the right direction. Seed number 12 in the East, I got the Detroit Pistons with a 31-51 record. Kind of like the Orlando Magic. I like their core. I think they're going to be much more competitive and improve greatly in that Eastern Conference. But overall, still not entirely sold on them maybe making that jump to the play-in area. I know some people believe they could still be a bottom feeder, while others believe they could even make the play-in tournament. I'm kind of sort of in the middle. I don't think they're good enough, but I also don't think they're going to be nearly as bad as they were last year or the previous couple of seasons. But I definitely think we need to kind of pump the brakes a little bit. We have not seen Jaden Ivey play in an NBA game yet, even though there's a lot of hype around him. He's a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. Obviously, we don't know what he's going to look like. So, especially with rookies, kind of tough to say. But anyway, but Cade Cunningham, on the other hand, I think he's a great player. When he was fully healthy, I thought he was extremely impactful and was impacting winning a little bit on that Pistons team last season. And fully healthy second year, I think he's absolutely going to explode. And just other guys, even the Bogdanovich trade, that makes him a lot better. I think he's a very underrated three-point shooter. Honestly, I think he's a very solid piece. Maybe doesn't fit the window, but definitely makes them a much better team, no question about it. So they're definitely going to be very competitive. I understand why Pistons fans are very excited with the future, and I definitely think they're heading in the right direction. Although, like I said, don't think they're quite going to be in a play-in spot, but they're not far off, though. At the 11th seed in the East, I got the Washington Wizards with a 37-45 record. They're kind of a weird team to judge. I don't really have a ton to say. They're not great, but they're not that bad either. They're okay, I guess. Honestly, for lack of a better term, they're an okay team. They do have some good players. Bradley Beal obviously is an all-star player, one of the better scorers in the NBA. Porzingis fully healthy. I think he's actually a very good player, especially when he was acquired by the Wizards. I honestly thought that he played really well. And the Wizards were kind of surging late in the season, if memory serves correctly. But apart from that, they don't really have a ton of amazing, talented pieces as a whole on that roster. I know Kyle Kuzma had a good season. And some of the offseason moves, I think they were decent, like Monte Morris, Will Barton. I think the depth kind of improved slightly. But still, I look at that Wizards team and I just think they're just mid, to be honest. I think the East has just gotten a lot better this offseason, and the Wizards, I don't think they got better to the point where I would put them in a play-in spot, I guess. Look, they're not bad, but they're just meh. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if they do crack a 9th or 10th seed. I definitely think there is some possibility there. Some teams in the East above them kind of fall off. They're capable of being in the play-in range. But overall, the ceiling of this team, I don't think is all that high, for lack of a better term. So I have them at 11th, just missing the play-in tournament. But yeah, they're okay, just not great. Coming in at the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference, just barely sneaking into the play-in tournament, I got the New York Knicks with a 39-43 record. Another one of those teams, they're definitely just mid. I know there's the memes of them having that mid three, is what they call it in New York. But I gave them a slight edge. I just think their roster is just slightly better. I do like some of the players they have. RJ Barrett obviously would be probably their best player. I think he could potentially elevate his game into all-star status. And even Julius Randle, he's not coming off the greatest season. I still think he is a solid player, and I think he gets more disrespected than probably he should. He's definitely a guy who still could give you 20 points and 10 rebounds a night. So I think he's a solid option, to be honest. I don't think he's as bad as people think. And then you look at a guy like Jalen Brunson, who they added in free agency. The Knicks have always lacked that true, starting caliber point guard. And although Jalen Brunson's far from a star in this league, I definitely think he's capable of being a good, playmaking option, a good starting point guard in this league, and definitely going to help them a little bit, in certain aspects on that floor. So I think he's going to make some positive improvements. And as a result, I do think the Knicks are good enough to sneak into a play-in team, but I don't think this is a great team by any means. Obviously, I have them finishing under 500, but they are good enough to sneak into the play-in tournament, but that's probably as far as they'll go, to be honest. All right, coming in at number 9, massive hot take here. I got the Brooklyn Nets as the 9th seed in the East. I know a lot of people are probably going to click off here because, they think this is an absurd take, but you know what? I'm not entirely sold, and I'll explain here. I got them at 42-40. I have them over 500. But I have some cause for concern for this team overall. I'm just not entirely sold. Look, if you want to look at their talent alone, obviously they're capable of being a top 5, top 4 seed in the East. But I look at the Nets team with everything that's gone down the offseason. I think I'm just presented with more questions than answers. And my questions are not necessarily with the supporting cast. I actually think they have a very good supporting cast with Joe Harris and Seth Curry, Nick Claxton, even TJ Warren, who they add, I think is a very underrated addition. But for me, it's the stars. Like, I just don't know what I'm going to get from them. You start with Ben Simmons, who, at his peak can be an all-star caliber player and like one of the better defenders in the league, but he has not played basketball in a year and a half, so I don't know how he's going to look. I feel like there could be an adjustment period with him, to be honest. And then you look like a guy like Kyrie Irving, who is a total wild card, honestly. We just don't know if this guy is like 100% in on this team, if he's good, motivated to play. I know he's coming into a contract year, but you can never be sure with Kyrie Irving. His tenure in Brooklyn hasn't been the greatest overall. I just think there has been some team issues and chemistry issues overall. And then, of course, Kevin Durant, who obviously, he's probably going to, play his best and, get his buckets and be a top guy in this league. No question about it. He will get his. But again, the teammate chemistry with him, I don't know how it's going to look, especially with him who wanted out in the offseason. He wanted his coach fired and his general manager fired. So I don't know if, coming into this season, we're going to see an entirely motivated Kevin Durant, honestly. I just think there's a lot of question marks on this Nets team, and I don't know, the chemistry for me, it's just going to be entirely in question. This is a hot take because I know that on paper it's a very talented team, but again, I'm really just looking at it from a mental perspective, from a motivational perspective, a chemistry perspective. I just think there's a lot of questions, and that's a big reason why I'm not entirely sold. But look, if they are a higher seed, it wouldn't surprise me, but with that in mind, I think there is an opportunity there for them to be a lot less dominant than people think. Coming in at the 8th seed in the East, I got the Chicago Bulls with a 44-38 record. I just look at the East. I think it's really tough, and I think if there's one team that kind of just slides down in the standings, for me, it's the Chicago Bulls. If I'm being totally blunt, I know Bulls fans are probably not going to like hearing this, but I think this team is a little bit overrated, to be honest. I think they overachieved the first half of the season, and the second half is kind of where they should have been, to be totally frank with you guys. I know losing Alex Caruso and Lonzo Ball are key losses. Those guys are both like probably their two best defensive guys and just high impact players. But when you have two guys who, Lonzo Ball is an above average point guard at best, and Alex Caruso being a role player, when those two guys is what makes or breaks your team's success, I think it's pretty telling, especially when you have a guy like DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine there. I just think the talent would suggest they should be a lot better, but those guys can't defend, and they're one of the worst three-point shooting teams. I think they ranked dead last in three-pointers attempted per game. You can't win in the NBA if you're not like a reliable three-point shooting team. It's very rare to be a good team if you can't consistently shoot three balls. So for the Bulls, I just think, like I said, they're overrated. I think the injuries maybe held them back, so that's a reason why they could be a bit higher. But again, I'm just teams in the East I just have more faith in. There's also questions about what type of year we're gonna get from a guy like DeMar DeRozan. I think he played like an MVP caliber player, but I could argue that was like peak DeRozan, and I'm not sure if he can replicate that, which could ultimately negatively impact the Bulls if he's not playing at that same rate. And also with a lot of the issues that they have with the three-point shooting and the defense, I don't think they did enough to really address that in the offseason. So I really just look at this team as nothing more than just a good team in the East that could probably make the play-in tournament, potentially make the playoffs as one of those lower seeds, but I don't see the ceiling as particularly high for this team, if I'm being honest, so I got them in 8th. Coming in at the 7th seed, I got the Atlanta Hawks with a 45-37 record. Even though I only have them and the Bulls separated by a game, I kind of view the Hawks a little bit differently. I look at the Bulls, like I said, I think they're a bit overrated, but in the Hawks case, I don't know. I feel like 7th could be underrating them a bit because I just think that core is just ready to explode and ready to take a huge step forward. I can legitimately see a scenario where the Hawks are a top 5, even top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. But right now I have them at 7th. Look at Trae Young, superstar caliber player, led the league in total points and assists. You acquired a DeJounte Murray, who was an all-star last year. I definitely think he's going to help that backcourt, especially defensively. Just other really solid pieces around those guys. You got Clint Capella, I think is one of the more underrated centers in the NBA. DeAndre Hunter is another guy that I could see having a low-key breakout season. I mean, I saw him in the playoffs last year. I was very impressed with him. So he could be an X factor as to why maybe the Hawks finish a lot higher in the standings as maybe someone like me would think. But overall, yeah, I do think the Hawks are a significantly better team. Obviously, record-wise, only have them with 2 more wins compared to last season, which could be a bit disrespectful. But again, the East, I think, is a lot deeper than it once was. So for that reason, look, obviously they're a young team. I could see them taking a significant step forward. I don't quite see them in like contending status quite yet, but they will be a playoff team nonetheless. They should probably make the playoffs pretty easily. We'll see what happens though. 7th, I don't think that's really a huge hot take. I don't think that would be considered like entirely out of the realm of possibility considering how well the East is right now. But yeah, we'll see with the Hawks. Maybe they could be a lot better than I think. Coming in at 6th in the East, I got Toronto Raptors with a 46-36 record. I mean, look, nothing really more needs to be proven as to why this Raptors team is a very solid team in the NBA. They have a very solid core overall. They're incredibly deep, although you can say that they don't have a, perennial superstar caliber player. This team they play by committee. They play as a unit cohesively. The team chemistry is amazing. They're a great defensive team. They're, decent three-point shooting team as well. I just like the team as a whole. I just think everybody on that team kind of just does a little bit of everything. They have a bunch of wings, bunch of like 6'8", 6'9" players that are just as versatile as can be in the NBA, which could be a recipe for success down the line. But you look at guys like Pascal Siakam, who was an all-NBA caliber player, Fred VanVleet, all-star, Gary Trent Jr., one of the more underrated scorers in the league, in my opinion. Scotty Barnes, Rookie of the Year. If he takes another step forward, the Raptors are going to be just that much more dominant. Now, I have him with less wins just because I think the East as a whole got a lot better. But to say that this team can't be at very least the top 6 team in the East, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit disrespectful. I don't understand why year in and year out people continuously disrespect the Toronto Raptors when they always prove you wrong every single year. There's no sort of merit or logical reasoning behind it, just because they always continue to impress everybody just with the way the team plays. They're great defensively. That's a big reason why I think they could be ahead of teams like the Bulls and the Hawks. I just think defensively they're much more better, much more well-rounded, much more structured. Better coaching. Nick Nurse, one of the better coaches in the NBA. I don't think this is a true contender. And coming from a Raptors fan, I think 6th is very fair and objectively fair is where they should be heading. I'm not overrating this team. I'm not saying they're a contender, top 3 team in the East like some Raptors fans. But I'm not going out here disrespecting like other NBA casuals who don't know what the hell they're talking about, with all due respect. Yeah, they're definitely a tough out in the playoffs. Not saying they're a contender, but they're easily capable of being a top 6 team in the East. And, don't sleep on this team like everyone fucking does. I don't know why, though. Coming in at the 5th seed in the East, I got the Cleveland Cavaliers with a 48-34 record. I love this team. I think this is a dangerous core that's going to be a contender for a very long time. And this is the season where I really think they're going to start making those steps and being taken more seriously and be considered a true threat to win a championship. Now, maybe not next year, but down the line, they're definitely going to be in that conversation. But as of right now, I think they're capable of being a top 5 team in the East. They're definitely knocking on the door of contention status. Evan Mobley, who was a Rookie of the Year nominee, probably going to take another step forward. People are comparing this guy to Chris Bosh, who can be someone who could put up about 20 points, 10 rebounds a night, be one of the better defensive interior guys in the league. Also got Jarrett Allen to complement him, who was an all-star for them last season. Darius Garland, who's one of the better young point guards in the league as well. Then you add Donovan Mitchell, who's among the better shooting guards in the league, probably at the very least top 5 shooting guard, arguably top 3 shooting guard in the league. Just core is just so young, only going to get better with time. And just everybody fits the timeline there. They're ready to enter their prime. They're ready to explode. They have just a great complement of everything on their team. Great defense, great shooting, just great all-around cohesion with that team. I think they're going to be a huge threat starting next year. And this is another one of those teams that I could definitely see being disrespected here. I mean, it's very possible if everything goes well, they could end up being like maybe a 3rd seed in the East potentially. So we'll see what happens. But the Cavs, bright future, ready to take that next step. Coming in at 4th in the East, I got the Miami Heat with a 49-33 record. Obviously, I still think this is a winning team. They have a winning culture. They're still going to be very good. Great coach in Eric Spoelstra. A bunch of just guys who sacrifice to win games. Great two-way players. Jimmy Butler obviously leading the way there. Like I said, still good, but I do believe that we could see a little bit of a decline, especially just with their core. Jimmy Butler is a little bit older. Kyle Lowry is in his mid-30s, probably not going to get any better than he is right now, and you could argue that he kind of declined quite a bit this past season. Also lost PJ Tucker, which I believe is a pretty big blow, especially to their defense. I just think that there's some teams in the East who are a lot younger and are ready to explode and are just more so in contender status than the Heat, even though the Heat did go to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I guess I don't view them quite the same. Maybe that's another team I'm disrespecting at the same time. Like, the NBA is full of parity. I think more parity than it's ever been in the last couple of years. So I just think there's other teams that are probably going to leapfrog them in the standings. But the Heat, still kind of in contender status, still a very good team, going to be a tough out. But I just think they're going to fall down to 4th, and we're going to see just a little bit of a step back from them, but still definitely a team to take seriously. Coming in at number 3 in the Eastern Conference, I got the Philadelphia 76ers winning north of 50 games once again, 51-31 record. I think that's exactly the same record as last year, but I think they'll be a little bit higher in the East standings. And I just look at the team. I think they're honestly a sneaky underdog to maybe come out of the East, even though I only have them as the 3rd best team. I think they have a really good shot, especially this upcoming season. You look at Joel Embiid, MVP caliber player who was an MVP nominee the last couple of seasons. You could argue that he should have won it this past year. You look at James Harden, who is in shape entering this season. He wanted to be in Philadelphia ever since, he was traded out of Houston to Brooklyn. Philadelphia was his first choice. I think he's going to come into this season, be extra motivated. And I feel like he's going to put up similar numbers, but I feel like overall it's going to be more impactful, and people are going to look at him having a much better season. They got Tobias Harris, who, is overpaid as he could be. I think he's a walking bucket. He's a guy who can give you 20 points a night, any given night, without question. I think he's a very underrated player in that retrospect. Of course, I talked about PJ Tucker, leaving Miami, but he's going to Philadelphia 76ers. That's a guy who probably won't give you a ton offensively other than, the occasional corner 3, but he is just a dog, just a difficult guy to really contain, play against. He's just a pest defensively. He's going to make it tough for the opponent. So I definitely think that's a huge gain for the 76ers. And I think he has a little bit more of offense, especially the shooting, over a guy like Matisse Thybulle. So it improves their depth in that retrospect. But the key here that I think could be the difference between them being just a very solid team, only going to the second round, to being a legit contender and coming out of the East, is the emergence of Tyrese Maxey. I think he has a really high ceiling. I really liked what he did last season. I liked what I saw overall, especially in the playoffs against the Raptors. He was absolutely phenomenal. Huge X factor there if he can take another step forward and maybe flirt with all-star status, be a guy that can maybe average 20 points, 7-8 assists, something like that. I think that is going to tremendously improve the chances of Philadelphia as a major threat in that Eastern Conference and in the NBA as a whole. So I really like where the core is going. I think they are a legit contender. Really, the only reason why I have them as 3rd, I just think that the 2 other teams are going to have better regular seasons, but the 76ers are a team that I'm definitely going to have my eye on this season. Coming in at number 2 in the Eastern Conference, I got the Boston Celtics with a 53-29 record. I like this roster overall. You could argue they were the most improved team despite making the NBA Finals this past season. I think talent-wise, on paper, they are capable of being a 60-win team. I honestly believe there is that high of a ceiling with this group. However, with the Ime Udoka situation and him being suspended the entire year, not having, the impact of that head coach could put some things in question, because I definitely think that coaching is a very underrated area for certain teams. I definitely think coaching is more impactful than people think. It's not just about, the on-court players and just the overall talent. You need good coaching to be a successful team in the NBA, in my opinion. So I could see slight fallback, but not to the point where they're an 7th or 8th seed, kind of like where they were at the first half of last season. I still think overall the talent is there where they can still be a 50-plus win team and definitely have the capability of contending for the top spot in the East and even coming out of the East once again and returning to the NBA Finals. And with that, the first seed in the East, the team that I think is going to have the best record in the Eastern Conference this season, I got the Milwaukee Bucks, just barely edging out the Boston Celtics, 54 wins, 28 losses to get that number 1 seed. I look at their team, I think fully healthy, this is a legit contender. I look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. I believe he's going to win MVP this season. That's probably like a boring tape. A lot of people are going with Luka Doncic or even Joel Embiid maybe to a lesser extent. But I just think Giannis is going to absolutely explode this season, average like 30, 13, and 7, which is roughly what he could be averaging anyway, like in a normal year. But I just think with the fact that I have the Bucks being the number 1 seed and him being the best player and putting up those amazing numbers, that he probably should be a front runner for the MVP. I think he has a great supporting cast with Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday. Re-signing Bobby Portis, I think, is very underrated. Pat Connaughton. They got a really solid group of players, in my opinion. They are a title contender, like I said, fully healthy. So it really shouldn't be a surprise to see them win the East to anyone, honestly, if you know basketball, or even for them to contend for another championship or potentially even win a championship when you have a guy like Giannis Antetokounmpo leading the way. With that, that is going to wrap up my Eastern Conference standings predictions for this upcoming 2022-2023 NBA season. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Give me your own standings if you'd like. Let me know, what teams I'm overrating, what teams I'm underrating. All comments are allowed. You can get at me. You can be as nice or as fucking critical as you want. I am a big boy. I can handle all that stuff, all that criticism. Give me your honest opinions. I do not mind. We can have a civil conversation. I'm all about that stuff. I'm open to engaging with all you guys on this particular topic. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts once again. And as always, I'll talk to you in the next one. I'll see you guys later.